Hey, listen up. Are you a variable annuity owner? If you are, you've been lied to by the insurance companies. Well, maybe that's stretching a little bit, but the main thing is that they're not telling you or showing you exactly what the fees are that they're charging you within the contract. Why is that? Well, because it's hard to find. It's not listed on your statement. These are internal fees, and they can be quite substantial. Anywhere between 2, 3, 4, and as much as 5% of your account value. That adds up to be a lot of money over your lifetime. If you'd like to know more, please watch the video and then click on the link below to get a no obligation annuity Xray that will reveal all the fees and all the costs and the rate of return on your annuity over time. Okay, so go ahead and watch the video, click on the link, and we'll get you an annuity Xray right away. It's going to be very good for your financial health.
How's everybody doing tonight? Fantastic. I'm Steve Hutchinson. I'm founder of Annuity Check. So we're actually going to be filming this tonight. This is actually an educational platform that's being utilized around the United States, and it's advisor level training that we have basically put together because we feel in today's day and age that if it's important for your advisor to understand exactly how these annuity contracts work and how your IRAs work, that it's probably even more important for you as well. Wouldn't you agree? So to help me out with this, because we're going to film, I'm going to go to the back of the room again, and I'm going to kind of run up here. I'd like everybody to scream and clap for me. Can we do that for me? Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, so here we go. Thank you, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started tonight, and we have a lot of information to cover so we can get everybody out of here by midnight. How's that sound? Fantastic. So first of all, I need to ask everybody, what did you think of dinner? How was that? Wonderful. Well, it's a new vegetarian plate they're bringing out with Fleming's now, so you'll feel a lot lighter by just having a small salad plate. But just kidding. Okay, so we do have a lot of information tonight. Specifically, tonight you're going to be learning a couple things, and we're going to really zero in on a couple really critical areas and kind of over-educate you on some things that we feel are very, very important. So to start with, we're going to be talking about 4 ways that you can increase your annuity income. Now, these aren't tax strategies or anything of that sort. These are actually ways to basically structurally get more out of these investments than what you ordinarily would be able to do. Second, we're going to talk about something called the power of zero, which is particularly important with what we have going on right now in the marketplace. And then lastly, we're going to talk about something that our company actually does that we make available. We're going to show you how to properly evaluate exactly what's happening with an annuity or an IRA in a manner that your advisor can't provide for you and that the carriers won't provide for you. So we'll be talking about that as we go. But once again, this information, while it's going to seem simple, it's actually way more advanced than it would look on the surface. So 4 ways to increase annuity income. Reduce fees and charges, eliminate volatility, avoid income riders, and maximize withdrawals. So I'm going to jump into this first section on reducing fees and charges, but I'm going to present this in a way that's going to give you an entirely different perspective as to how you think about fees and charges in the future. So let's go ahead and jump into this. We're going to talk about when a 1% fee can actually cost you 21%. So how could that be? So to show you the math behind this, I'm going to bring in our hypothetical character. But before I do that, let's think about the perception that we all have of a 1% fee. Most of us think of our wealth as kind of a big pie, our wealth, and that a 1% fee is just a small cut out of the bigger pie. Would you agree with that? Right. It's kind of the perception. So if you're in a bull market, that's great because you really don't need to worry about it. It's just 1%. You're making all this other money. It's all great. So let's go ahead and challenge this a little bit mathematically. And I'm going to bring in our favorite character, Joe. Everything that we're talking about here tonight, and I have to tell you this, is hypothetical, except Joe. Joe's for real. No, okay. So Joe has saved up over his lifetime $200,000 through age 65. Now, I want to make another distinction about this money that Joe saved up. Joe actually went out and worked and physically saved this money up, so it's his principal. So it's Joe's money that he earned, okay? So I'm making that distinction because I'm going to come back to it when I change the way that you look at fees. So Joe has $200,000 through age 65. At age 65, Joe says, I'm going to take this down to the local advisory firm. So he goes down the street, and I'm going to invest my $200,000. So at age 65, Joe invests $200,000, and now we're going to follow this all the way through age 90. Now, to keep this example simple, Joe's going to remain fully invested until his age 90. We're going to show him taking no withdrawals. He's just going to let it grow, and we're going to assume that the account grows at 5%, which generates a growth of $413,000. Now, the reason that it's able to grow at 5%, or at least the perception is, because he got the advice from his advisory firm that they provided him, and as part of that trade-off, Joe agreed to a very simple arrangement. Joe agreed to a 1% fee basically on his account. Now, before I show you the cumulative effects of this 1% fee, let me ask you a question. Do you think Joe pays that annual fee on his growth or on his entire account? Entire account. Okay, so let's take a look at this. As Joe's account grows, so does his 1% fee. So at age 70, it's not accumulated very much, but by the time we get out at age 90, Joe has paid over $86,000 on a 1% fee. Now we have to reduce the effects of this someplace. We have to account for this someplace. So he already had his principal, that's his money, so we probably need to reduce the amount of growth that he experienced by the amount of the fees. So let's go ahead and take the $413 and reduce it by the $86,870, leaving Joe with $326 net. Everybody should have a pen and a piece of paper somewhere on your table around you. If you don't, pull a piece of paper and a pen close to you, and I want you to write down a number for me that we're going to need if you want dessert. So everybody tell me when everybody has a pen and a paper ready. Because I don't want to have to repeat the number over and over. Okay. So the number I want you to write down is $526,796. $526,796. Okay? That's the amount Joe has left over at age 90. Does everybody get that? We'll come back to that in a second. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at the original growth that he experienced before the fees of the $413,000. Now here's where you're going to take on board a new way of looking at fees. So this is important. So you had $413,000 of growth. He paid the $86,870 in fees, leaving him with $326. So the $86,000 was paid to generate the $413. That's the performance he was paying for, correct? Because he didn't need to pay $86,000 for his $200 because we all agreed he earned the $200. That's his money, right? So he paid the fee to generate the growth. So it makes sense to start looking at your fees as a percentage of the growth that you're paying the fees to generate. Does that make sense? So when we look at it that way, all of a sudden now you know why the tallest building in San Francisco belongs to a financial firm, right? 21% of his growth went to the house. Joe got to keep 79%. But Joe just didn't lose the 21% of his growth. He lost something else. Does anybody have any idea what else he might have lost? Anybody? Okay. Joe lost the opportunity to earn money on the dollars that he paid in the fees. Does that make sense? So there's a name for this. Economists call this lost opportunity cost. So what this means is had Joe retained the 1% fee in his account and continued to compound that at the hypothetical rate of the 5% that we're using, he would have recovered this lost opportunity cost, or he could have earned more money. He could have actually earned, through age 90, another $63,000 had he been able to retain that 1% that he paid in fees. Does that make sense? So it's that compounding effect. And fees and lost opportunity cost tend to accelerate over time, as you can see here. So let's go full circle with this. Factoring in the lost opportunity cost, Joe lost over $150,000 to a 1% fee. So the $150,000 that came off the top, leaving us with the 326 and the 200, which is the number you wrote down, the 526, I'm sorry. So had Joe done it differently, instead of 526, 796, he could have had $677,000 271 in his account, all by saving a 1% fee. So you may not be able to completely eliminate fees out of your existence or out of your portfolio completely, but you need to make sure, and this highlights how important it is that anything that you're paying a fee for, you need to be damn sure that you're getting an offsetting benefit for that that's greater than or equal to that fee. Does that make sense? Okay? So the big print giveth and the fine print taketh away. Where are these fees? So buried in your contracts, in the paperwork, in your statements at the back in small print, you'll see things like advisor fees, wrap fees, soft dollar cost, transaction cost, deferred sales charges, on and on and on. And it can go on for several pages. I could go on for several slides, different types of fees. The key thing that you need to take away from this is that it's important and there are advantages to reducing the fees. So first of all, if you reduce fees, it's going to allow for greater gains during the good years, right? It's also going to protect your principal when you have a flat market or a down market. Had Joe, when he started at that 200, had the market been flat, the fee would have reduced his 200 down to whatever, right? So in this case, it protects that principal. And then lastly, you earn money on the money that didn't go to fees. That's called that lost opportunity cost. You retain that and you're able to keep that. So now let's take a look at these fees by annuity type. So there's basically three types of annuities that are primarily used for retirement accounts. The first one is called a fixed annuity. So the first word in that is fixed. So why is that important? What does fixed mean? Anytime that there's the word fixed associated with an annuity, it means that the principal is protected and fixed and guaranteed by the insurance company, and you can't lose that principal. Does that make sense? So it's fixed. So annuity, there's good, bad, and indifferent annuities, just like there's good, bad, and indifferent real estate, just like there's good, bad, and indifferent ski boats. It doesn't make any difference. It means that there has to be the ability within the contract to take some type of an annuitization option, which means annual income. So as long as that's available in the contract, then that makes it an annuity, and it can only be issued by an insurance company, which can only be formed as an act of Congress. So if an insurance company issues a contract that gives you the ability to take annual income, and you have payout factors and everything available in the back of the contract, that's what makes it an annuity. Outside of that, there's hundreds and hundreds of different variations of the way these work. So they're not good, they're not bad, there's a large number of them. Okay, so it's similar to a CD, except it's not FDIC insured, but you have a protected principal and you earn a guaranteed level rate of interest. So for instance, you might have a 7-year, 3% contract, and it just means you're going to get 3% for 7 years, and then that's it. There's generally no fees or riders attached to these. So you basically don't have to be concerned about a lot of fine print. It just is going to pay you what it pays you, and that's it. Everybody got that one? The next one is fixed indexed annuities. So you still see the word fixed. Now, there's over 430 variations of fixed indexed annuities. that we track through our software that we're going to be talking about. But they protect the principal, and they're generally tied, not directly invested in an index, but they're linked to an index. So you can experience index-linked returns, but your principal is protected. Now, there are some gotchas that you have to watch out for with fixed indexed annuities. The first and the biggest one is something called caps. So here's the way a cap works. If I can jump 30 feet straight up in the air, and the ceiling here is 13 feet, where am I going to break my neck? At 13 feet. So that's a cap, that's a limit. So the same thing with the contracts. If you have 10% growth from an index return and you have 25 or you have a 2.5% cap, you're going to stop at 2.5% regardless of what the index actually performs. The next one is something called a participation rate. So a participation rate works like this. If you have 10% gain from an index and you have 30% participation, you're going to get 30% of that 10, which is 3. Everybody have that? Then there's something sometimes added to these contracts called riders. So you have the basic benefits of an annuity contract as it's issued by the carrier, and then oftentimes you can add a rider, and it can be added just with a check mark, and a rider is anything that's added to externally to the base of that contract. It's an add-on. All right, how many people here have ever been to Best Buy? Okay, all right, so sure. So you walk into Best Buy and maybe you want to grab a gift for your sister, so you go to the back and you see a Blu-ray DVD player or something. You grab it, you run up to the checkout, you start to check out. What is something that they always try to sell you in addition to the DVD player when you check out? Extended warranty. So here's the question. Is that a good deal for you or for Best Buy?
Best Buy.
Best Buy. Okay, so here's the takeaway. I want you to start thinking of any rider added to any of your investments or contracts or annuities as critically as you would think about being sold a extended warranty on the DVD player or the walkie-talkies that you lose the next week, right? Okay, so we'll go into these in another section. In fact, I have a section, it's so important, I have a section devoted to the most popular rider added to these contracts that generally cost 1%. We know how much that can affect you, and it's called an income rider. So if you've ever heard of anything that has like a 6% guaranteed account, or it's got 7% guaranteed or whatever, beware, it's probably one of these income riders. They're not all bad. There's a way to calculate it. We're going to talk about that. But on the whole, they're generally problematic, and I'm going to explain the math behind it. Okay? Which brings us to a different type of annuity that's called a variable annuity. Why do they call it variable? Because it can vary. Why can it vary? Because your money's invested directly in the stock market in something called sub-accounts. So the difference between a sub-account and a mutual fund is a sub-account is what they call basically a fund inside of an annuity. Okay? Those are called sub-accounts. Your principal is at risk, but probably the most defining feature of a variable annuity is the fees that you have to pay. How many people here have heard of Morningstar? Okay, everybody? So according to Morningstar, the fees inside of these annuities can range from 2 to 4%. Now, here's what's scary about these fees inside of the variable annuities. When you get your statement every quarter, usually the statements are very zeroed in on where you were last quarter and where you are this quarter. They don't give you the 50,000-foot view of what's going on. They also only show fees for any riders. The fees I'm getting ready to talk about are not on your statement. The only way you can get them is call the carrier and ask specifically, how much is my mortality and expense charge? Well, according to Morningstar, it's 1.25%. The next question you have to know how to ask them is, how much are my admin charges? And they'll say, well, that's around 0.28, which is about another 0.25%, but it's added on top of the expense charges. Then you say, well, what about my expense ratio charges? Now, did all of you know you need to ask these questions of your carrier? Probably not. Expense ratio fees, these are the management fees to actually manage those sub-accounts, okay, inside of the annuity. And this is not a fee that you're paying to your advisor for general advice or investment advice. This is actually an additional charge, and these charges are buried in the 90 pages of contract that you have that's stuck in the drawer, okay? So expense ratio fees, you add those up and it averages 2.50. Now these aren't my numbers, they actually are our numbers, but they're also Morningstar's numbers, 2.5 on average of these fees. Then if you have one of the most popular writers, and out of a multi-trillion-dollar market, 70% of all the annuities have some form of an income rider, which is an additional 1%. What is 1% plus 2.5%? 3.5%. Could you imagine the lost opportunity cost on 3.5% over a 30-year retirement? It makes you wonder, are those fees worth it to me in my scenario? Which is what you should be wondering, which is the reason that we have the educational workshops that we do. So let's go back to Joe. Remember him? Joe took 100% of the risk because he put his money at risk with the advisory firm. He made 100% of the effort to accumulate the money to be able to invest in the first place. Now, so he's the one that put in the 30, 40 years to accumulate it, took all the risk, put it at risk. The advisory firm is not at any risk whatsoever. They even make fees if the account loses money, right? Because they get the whole account. He gets 79% of the gain. That's why we talk about this small cut sometimes can become something that we reference as death by 1,000 cuts. And this is not fear-mongering. This is just the simple reality that these things can add up and they can terrorize your account over time through just small, tiny cuts. Does that make sense? So if you don't know exactly how much you're paying in fees in the back of your contract, according to AARP, you shouldn't feel like the Lone Ranger because 8 out of 10 of us have no idea. All right? And these fees, once again, these are buried in the back of the contract. So our software that we utilize to calculate these fees does something very simple. We can take any statement, whether it be an IRA, an annuity, or 401k, whatever it is that you're working with, and we plug in the original amount of money that you invested in that investment. Then we calculate based on what product it is, which company it's with, of which we have 2,400 built into the software. And if we don't, we can go user defined and still run the calculation. So we calculate how much you've taken out in the form of money to you, and then how much do you have now? And we do this using a math concept called internal rate of return. Now, internal rate of return is something that we call the gold standard of finance. All that matters, it doesn't matter what's on the print, the brochures. What did I start with? What did I take out? What did I end up with? So everything we talk about tonight, we're going to be looking at it from the angle, what did I start with? What did I take out? What did I end up with? If you can learn to do that with everything you have going on, then you're going to be in a much better place and basically able to cut through everything and get right down to whether this is performing the way I want it to perform or this isn't. So many times I meet people that are spending an hour every Sunday cutting out coupons to save $200 a month on a constant basis on groceries and eating out and that type of thing. And while they're busy doing that, they just spent $1,300 in fees for things they're not even going to get any advantage from in the last 30 days. And I'm making those numbers up, but you get the idea. Because your investment accounts represent a large portion of your accumulated wealth by the time you're in retirement. You have your real estate, second would be your retirement accounts, right? So there you go. Or sometimes first is your retirement accounts and second is your real estate. So these small changes and adjustments and your awareness of this is probably one of the most valuable things from a financial angle that you can engage in.
Now you're probably thinking after you saw this video is, wow, I cannot believe it, how much I've been paying in fees. It's incredible. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go down and click the link in my description box, okay? And then is what I'm going to have you do is get some information from you, and then we're going to do a variable annuity Xray for you. We're going to show you all the fees that's being charged. We're going to show you how it affects your rate of return, your withdrawals in retirement. And it's like an Xray. It'll show you everything that's been hidden that's not been shown to you on your statements or from your broker. Okay, so that's what I want you to do now. There's some other videos in my channel too you can look at. Some other things about the variable annuities. There's quite a few videos in my channel for that as well. But right now is what I'd like you to do is click on that link and let's get an annuity Xray for you right away so that you know exactly what you're paying. Every minute is important, right? It's your retirement. It's going to affect how you live.